Hello class! I am so very excited for this video today. We are making my personal favorite soup, Zuppa Toscana. Probably familiar with that. It's one of the most popular soups at Olive Garden, but it's a really delicious hearty sausage, potato, kale recipe that's quick, flavorful, and easy to put together. Alright, so if you haven't already done so, pull up the recipe, follow along with me as we take over the steps. But what is the number one most important thing that we do before we set up to the kitchen, before we get started? Checking out our recipe, right? So it's important that you take the time to read through your entire recipe from ingredients all the way down to instructions at least once, probably more than once, to make sure that you really have an understanding of what this recipe is going to entail before you get started. Alright, you're going to hear me talk about mise en place over and over again, but the best way to really get yourself up for a proper mise en place is by taking that time to read over your recipe. Alright, so let me show you what I have here. I have already gone through all of my ingredients. I have looked for any tools, equipment that I need, and I have set myself up for success here. Show you my little workspace. Alright, I have my measuring tools. I know I'm going to need potatoes, onions, and kale. I have that set up. I got our cold items over there staying chilled for the end. I've already prepared my 6 cups of chicken broth that the recipe calls for. I used just a Cisco chicken base, but you're welcome to use any type of chicken broth that you like. Bouillon, dry based, or even store-bought box chicken broth will work fine. If you have the time, materials, and the energy to pre-make your own homemade chicken stock, that's going to give you the best flavor ever. Alright, I also have our seasonings out and ready with their own measuring tools. We have our garlic. Alright, and notice that I have our meat here. This is very own cutting board. Alright, it's so very important to prevent any cross-contamination that you give all raw meats their own space, their own tools and utensils that will not come in contact with anything else. So I have its own cutting board, its own space, right, and its own spatula, and then we have our own separate cutting board with knife for when it comes time to dice up and chop up our onion and our potatoes and our kale. Alright, I have my nice large pot ready on our stovetop, and we're set to get started. Alright, looking at some preparation terms here, I see that I'm going to need 1 pound of ground sausage. Now this recipe calls for spicy Italian. I personally like a little mix between mild and hot. Doing full hot's a little spicy for my family's taste, so I kind of do a combination. You know, sometimes you can get the nice pre-ground already. You take it out of the package and go. Food's provided me with links, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and slice those and get the meat out of the links, and we're going to show you how to do that. Alright, I also see that I'm going to need 4 to 5 potatoes peeled. Now, I was lucky to get these giant potatoes from Cub, so I'm only using 3 large ones because I think that's going to take the place of 4 to 5 of the smaller ones that we're used to getting. Alright, we saw we have our salt, our pepper, our heavy cream, and our kale out. Alright, I got some Parmesan cheese ready for garnishing. We can talk about some other ways that we would like to garnish it. Alright, I looked through in my instructions. Alright, and what's nice about this recipe is it also tells us how we should prepare our vegetables in the ingredients, but sometimes it doesn't give those instructions and you have to look in the directions. Alright, but I already see that I need to dice my onion into a small dice, so we're going to talk about the proper, safe ways to dice an onion. Alright, and I need to peel and cube my potatoes. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with those potatoes, seeing as that takes the most amount of time, and then we can get started with the rest of the good stuff. Alright, so I have my garbage here ready for me. It's so important that we clean up after ourselves as we go while we're cooking to make sure that our kitchen stays a safe space. I have already gone ahead and thoroughly washed and scrubbed my potatoes, making sure that there's no dirt residue on there. But let's talk about the 2 ways that you can peel potatoes. Alright, of course, one that we're probably familiar with is the peeler. This might be the faster, easier version for some. Alright, but also a paring knife does a really great job as well. Key with the paring knife, commonly used often to peel apples, is taking the peel and bringing it to your thumb. Now the skin on this one is a little thin, so it kind of makes my paring a little bit hard. As you can see, it takes out a larger chunk. So noting that from these potatoes, tells me that the best tool for me today is my peeler. So we're going to go ahead and just quick downward strokes with our peeler, which is nice because it puts those peels directly into our garbage. If you don't have space for this in your kitchen, you could have a garbage bowl on top of your countertop that you peel them into, right? Maybe a compost container as well. Oh, look at that. Quick and easy work. Little red potatoes, I like to use the paring knife for, because I feel I can get more precision peeling those. Large surface ones like these potatoes, but they're just massive, I gotta tell you. They're probably about a pound each. Using this peeler faster. If there's a little bit of peel left, that's okay. Potato skin is safe to eat as long as you do a good job washing. I'm going to go ahead and finish peeling these potatoes and we'll be right back. Alright, our potatoes have been peeled. I have washed my hands. We're ready to move on to the next step. I went ahead and gathered myself a little scraper. So once we dice everything, we can easily use this to scrape it on into the pot. You never ever want to use the blade of your knife to scrape items off your cutting board into whatever vehicle you're cooking with, because what that's going to do is going to really dull that blade quite quickly. Alright, so invest in one of these. Use your hand, use a spatula, whatever it may be, but never use your knife to scrape items off of your cutting board. Alright, so there are separate knives to the head here for our vegetables. And now we're going to move on to our meat. The first instruction in our recipe tells us that we are going to saute our sausage in our large pot for about 5 to 6 minutes until it's browned. Alright, we're going to use a slotted spoon here, then to take the sausage out and put it on a paper towel lined plate. Alright, keeping that aside, keeping that safe, separate from any of our other produce here. So, let me bring out our meat and our cutting board. Alright, so our recipe only calls for a pound. Each package here has a pound. So that tells me that I'm just going to use about 2.5, maybe 3 of each here for our recipe. So I'm going to take a couple links of my mild here, throw it in there. Maybe like 3 of that one and 2 of the hot. That way I can add spice later if I'd like to. Got a couple of our hot links out here. Put that meat aside to be properly stored later. Look, you can really tell the color difference between the hot. You can see it's a lot more red in there. You might be able to see some of the spices in there once we open it up versus the mild, which is kind of like sausage, right? Okay, so when you get links like this, it does have this thin skin on the outside, which is okay to eat. And maybe if you're grilling broth, you could give that nice crispy exterior. Right, but for this recipe, we just need it to be browned, so we're going to go ahead and remove the skin. You can use a knife if you'd like to. Get on underneath there. Go here. Kind of make a cut. Opens it up, and I can just crumble it with my hands that I just washed and throw the whole thing into the pan. Look at that, skin removed. Let's repeat that step with all the sausages here. You also can just undo the top part and then kind of squeeze the sausage out through the top as well. That's good. Well, I'm going to repeat this step with all 5 of our sausage links, and then we'll continue. All right, got all 5 sausage links out of the skin. I have removed my cutting board that I was in contact with our raw meat here. Took that out of the way so it can't come in contact with anything else, and I have washed my hands and we're ready to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my pot here onto, I'd say about like a medium, maybe a medium high heat. All right, we're going to cook the sausage until it's brown. All right, it should take about 5 to 6 minutes. Now, notice you don't have to add any oil or butter to this pot ahead of time because the sausage already naturally has fat in there, and that's going to help prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the pan while still giving us some of those beautiful brown bits on the bottom of the pan, which is called fond. Fond is just concentrated flavor, and we're going to deglaze the pot with our chicken stock to get those little brown bits loose and into our soup, giving us that flavor that we want. All right, so we know that this is going to take a few minutes, so that tells us that we have some time to get started on some of our other ingredients. All right, recipe tells us that we need half of a white or a yellow onion. Bring it back over my cutting board. I have a gorgeous, huge yellow onion, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that in half, and then we're going to talk about the best way to dice it. All right, so when you're looking at an onion, right, you have the flower, which is this top part, and you have the root. All right, now key to cutting an onion so you don't get those tears and you're not crying the whole time is keeping the root intact, actually. So what you can do is slightly shave off the flower. All right, and if you have a whole lot of these little springy bits at the bottom, you can just give those a little shave. All right, but then we're going to cut it in half. Which side? I like a lot of onion. I'm going to use the bigger side. Set this side over here, save for another recipe. Give our meat a quick stir. I hear sizzling going on. Good things are happening. I already start to smell the spices that were in that pot. Yeah. Turn my temp down just a little bit. I'm going to cut that guy to medium, I think. Okay, so now that we cut it in half, now we can go ahead and remove the peel. All right, so of course you want the outer layer. But you see the second layer right underneath the peel? That kind of gets rubbery and tough and might not necessarily cook down soft. All right, so what I like to do is I remove this whole first layer. And then notice how it's a little more yellow underneath there versus the more white on the inside. We're gonna go ahead and remove that second layer too. Toss some other scraps in the garbage. Onions ready to go. Keeping that root on, saving ourselves some tears. All right, now look at this. Your onion literally naturally gives you the lines telling you where it wants to be cut. All right, you may have seen a lot of videos where chefs kind of go in here, they make a cut down the middle, and then they go along with the lines to cut it. Now that's a great way to do so. But as beginners, while we're still getting used to our knife skills, we don't want to risk cutting ourselves. So I'm going to show you a safe beginner way to cut that knife. Giving them another stir here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the knife, keep them intact, and just make cuts along these lines here. All right, now you see the way that I'm holding my hand. Now this is called a tunnel cut. All right, so it tells me that while I'm making cuts through the lines, my knife is coming through my hand like a tunnel. So I'm keeping this round object steady. It's not going to roll around on my cutting board. All right, noticing my grip here. I have my 3 fingers around the handle. My finger and my thumb are around the bolster, giving me a really steady grip on this knife. This knife's not going anywhere. All right, this is the safest way to hold your knife. All right, some people like 2 fingers up on here. I prefer just 1, whatever's most comfortable for you. But thumb on one side, finger on the other. Never ever putting your finger on top. That risks cutting you or giving you carpal tunnel or tiring that finger. But on the other side, and your 3 fingers around the handle. All right, so we went ahead, we made our nice cuts. All right, we know that our onion's looking for 1/4 cut, so I'm just going to go through some of these sections and just make it a little bit finer. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it the opposite direction. So I cut through this way, we're going to turn it the opposite way, and then just make the same distance cuts as we did this way, the opposite way. You see when I pull it apart how it looks about 1/4 an inch. When I turn it this way, I'm going to cut it about the same width. Check it out. And just like that, it's already diced. Now we are all about reducing our food waste here. So when I start to get to this angle where I lose a little bit of firmness on my onion, What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on its flat side, recut some of those lines, and come around and cut as much as I can. Using those lines, doing the dicing for us. And look at that. Very little waste. I could even come through here and dice it a little bit right there. Ooh, and you know what? Even though I followed that, this is a potent onion. So sometimes best practices, even still, we're going to get some tears. That's okay. Alright, look at that. Beautifully diced onion here for us. Set that aside. We're going to go ahead, give the meat another stir real quick. Ooh, I see that pond forming. Let's come over here and take a peek. Do you see those brown bits down there? Look at that. So pure flavor. Break up some of these larger chunks. We want little pieces of sausage in each bite. Smells so good. Nice. Awesome. Okay. So coming back, I see that the next step, once we remove our meat, is we're going to be in that same pot adding butter and sauteing our onions. And then once those are translucent, we're going to add the garlic. So why not, while the meat is cooking, get started on our garlic. So I need about 1 tablespoon of mince. I have some fresh garlic here. If you have already minced garlic at home, you're welcome to use that. Why not save ourselves some time and effort? But I just happen to have some leftover garlic, so obviously I'm going to use that up. Set that aside. We've got our same knife from our onion, which is okay that we're using the same onion knife for our onion and our garlic. Both are going into the pot at the same time. It hasn't come in contact with any raw meat juices, so it's okay that we're using the same one here. Alright, so to mince garlic, you're going to take it with the flat side of your knife. You're just going to give it a little whack. Crack it up a little bit. See there? And then look how easy the peel comes off doing it that way. So go ahead, do it with the other side. Apply some pressure to heal the crack, and then remove that peel. Easy. Alright, the bottom part there, you can see looks a little ugly to me, so I'm just going to trim that up a little bit. If you see any parts of your garlic that you don't like, no shame in giving a little trim. Alright, and we're just going to mince it. Mincing means just to finely dice. I'm just going to stack mine up. Use that tunnel cut again to try and keep control of our garlic. I'm just going to make a couple slices through here the long way since it's nice and wide. Alright. And then turn around and use what's called the rock chop to bring my knife back and forth, rocking and chopping all the way through until I get that garlic as small as I would like it. Notice that there's a little green on the inside of my garlic. That's okay. Still safe. Just looks like it was getting ready to sprout before they harvested it. So interesting thing about garlic is the smaller you cut it, the more surface area you expose, the more potent flavor you're going to get out of it. Where recipes that call for whole garlic cloves are going to have a relatively mild garlic flavor. If it calls for you just to slice it, you're going to come into a little bit more potent range. But once you get down to this mincing, that's when you get the maximum amount of flavor. All the oils in there have more surface area to seep out of. You get the maximum effect. Alright, our garlic is nice and minced. Okay, let's go ahead and check on our meat here. Should be pretty close to done. See brown things happening. Give it a better angle. Breaking up these pieces. I'm trying to heat up just a little bit. They give this about 2 more minutes and she'll be wrapping it in. Alright guys, hear that sizzle? See that browning? This meat is done. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. And since this spoon came in contact with the raw meat, I'm going to set that aside and get a different utensil. But first, we're going to use our slotted spoon and transfer all this good stuff to our paper towel lined plates. This is going to help drain any excess grease off. Plus it gives us a safe space to store meat while we're cooking our vegetables. Set that guy aside. And real quick before I add the onions, I just want you to see all that fond. Look at those brown bits of flavor in there. That is just pure concentrated bits of awesome. Alright, so I'm going to turn my pan back on. And now we are going to add our butter, which our recipe tells us that we need 2 tablespoons of butter. So we're going to add that right into our pot with the fond. Add 1 tablespoon. Now I already went ahead and pre-measured my butter here. You know, our sticks usually have those nice markings on there for us. And luckily we're not baking, so if it's off by a smidge, that's alright. Got my butter here. Let's add our onions. Using my scraper, not my knife. Now only the onions, guys, not the garlic yet. Garlic burns quite quickly. So that's why our recipe tells us to wait until our onions are translucent before we add them. And then we're literally just going to cook those for just a minute. Basically, when you cook garlic, you're just heating it up until you can really start to smell it. Yum. Let that work. Ooh, can instantly smell the onion. Alright, that is sauteing. So we're going to do some more multitasking here because we know that onions take just a couple minutes. So while that sautés, we're going to dice up our potatoes. Get ready for that next step. Okay. Alright, so we are looking for about a 1-inch dice here. These are so large that I'm just going to go ahead and cut them in half. Cut them in half again. Flip them flat. Cut them in half again. And then it's ready for my dice. Alright, now key here is trying to get a uniform size. Alright, we want our potatoes to be nice and soft and tender when we're ready to eat them. And if they're all different sizes, then those potatoes are going to cook at different rates of time. So I'm doing my best to make them about an inch. See? About an inch. Not too thick, not too thin. And I'm just going to repeat that with all of my potatoes here. Onions, stir. So it's starting to get nice and soft. Alright. Alright, next potato. Cutting it in half. Half again. And again. Really makes quick work of it, huh? Make sure you're holding your knife correctly. Alright. These are just massive. This side got a little thick, so I'm just going to give it a little cut there and make sure it stays even. Alright. Give my onions a stir one more time for your next potato. Ooh, they are already looking close. This pot of mine is nice, makes quick work of sauteing. This one's the biggest one yet. I'm going to cut these in 3 since it's so wide. Good thing my family likes potatoes, otherwise this almost might be too much. That's one of the nice things about cooking is we are able to make the recipes according to what we like. You want more potatoes in your soup? Great. You want less potatoes in your soup? Also great. However you like it. Maybe we're vegetarian and we don't want all that sausage, that butter, and that cream in there. Alright, what can we do with that? Does the soup absolutely have to have sausage in it? Nope. You could just add some seasonings in there, maybe some crushed pepper to get some of that spice. You could maybe use cashew milk or cashew butter or almond milk instead of it. Although I think the cashew milk's a little bit heavier, so that might be better flavor. There's always alternatives to make these recipes fit for. Okay, so our onions. Look at that. Look at that color. Oops, almost dropped you in. Already started to pick up the fond from the bottom of that pot. They're starting to look translucent to me. So I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic. Using my scraper to get that off the cutting board. Okay, and we are literally only cooking that for a minute. Just until we can start to smell it. Okay. Give that a nice stir. Really glad I used the big half of the onion now. Look how nice I cooked that. Okay. So I see the next step of my instruction is we're going to take a half a cup of our chicken stock and we're going to deglaze the pan with that using a wooden spoon. Now I'm already using my wooden spoon to cook with it because of course we needed the separate utensil than the one that touched the raw meat. So we already got that ready there. So I'm going to go ahead while that is finishing cooking and pour myself a nice little half cup of chicken stock here. Key to liquid measuring cups here is when you are measuring, you want to make sure it's on a flat, level surface. And you come down at eye level to look at your measurements to make sure it's correct. Guys, that's the only way. Yep. I smell garlic. I'm just going to give it another 10 seconds or so, and then we're going to deglaze. Your recipe calls also for 2 cups of water. So while that garlic is finishing up, I'm going to go get myself 2 cups. Even Miss Collins doesn't get a perfect mise en place, apparently. That's alright. We all gotta start somewhere. Alright, garlic looks ready to me. I'm going to take my half cup of chicken stock here. And I'm going to use my wooden spoon to really get all over the bottom of this pot, to loosen up any of those brown bits to make sure I get that flavor in my soup. Now I know it's a little dark right now from the brown bits, but don't you worry, once we add the rest of the broth, it's going to evenly distribute that flavor. Oh yeah, looks so good. Okay, so now I see we can add the rest of our chicken stock or chicken broth right into the pot. Alright, we are adding our 2 cups of water. So we have 6 cups chicken broth, 2 cups of water. Love it. Tells us we're also adding in our potatoes. Aren't we so glad we diced those while the onions were cooking? Ah. Do your best to make a giant mess. Last one. That's okay. Love it. Alright, setting my cutting board to the side. We don't need that until it's time to cut up our kale. Alright. Next we're adding our salt and pepper. Yum. Alright. Now, chicken broth is already pretty high in sodium. But I don't really hear anything.
Earphones or
yeah, to this.
There.
Yeah, we're good. I turned on noise canceling just in case. Yep.
Thank you.
Alright, let's get ready for our kale. Sorry about the loud noises back here. We're having some repairs happening right now. But I went ahead and washed this, got this all nice and ready. And let's talk about cutting kale. Alright, so I got blessed with some beautiful kale. Look at that color. This is just ideal. So I thoroughly washed it because as you can see there's folds and wrinkles in there. So we want to make sure that you get any trapped dirt, residue, whatever it may be. But if you're looking at kale, notice here how it has this big stem. This is a really tough, woody stem. This is never going to cook down soft. Alright, so you always want to remove this. An easy way to do so is take your nice leafy kale, fold it in half, kind of like a taco. Alright, and I have washed my knife since cutting the onions and potatoes, so I don't have the potato starch on there. Alright, so it's folded in half like a taco, and then you are just going to go along the seams. And just like that, you remove the stem. Alright, so I know our recipe calls for 4 cups. So I actually am lucky and I have a 4-cup measuring cup here. So as I'm giving it a rough chop, I'm just going to keep adding it there until I reach 4 cups so I know I have enough. So to chop it up, I'm just going to bring it into a little bunch here. Just run my knife through it roughly. Alright, you're just kind of looking for little bite-sized pieces. The key to cutting vegetables for soups is you want to think about the vehicle that you're eating with. Alright, we're using a spoon, so you want to make sure that the pieces are small enough that you can get a little bite of potato, a little bite of kale, a little bite of sausage, and some broth in each bite. So keeping that in mind, keep it small enough. So again, we fold it like a taco, go along the end, get rid of that stem. Chop. Just cannot get over how beautiful this kale is. Down. Notice how I'm tucking my fingers in as I go, so as I'm chopping, don't have a risk of cutting myself. Oh. Pretty close. Whoop, that one's pretty close to our 4 cups, which is awesome because the soup is about at a boil. See how this recipe really is all about multitasking? Take a peek at our soup. See all that energy, all those bubbles? Give that a nice little stir. Cool. Alright, I'm going to reduce that down to a medium-low. Low is good as well, but I'm just going to do a little medium-low. That works best for my fire range here. You know your stovetop best. Alright, so the keywords for simmer, if you remember, are different cooking types. Boil has a large, big bubbles. Simmer is the small, low energy, barely breaking the surface. Alright, see the bubbles there right now? This is still kind of too big, but that's okay because it's coming down from that boil temperature. So we're just going to keep our eye on it. If it stays that big of energy, that means we're just going to turn it down to low and let it simmer. Alright, I'm going to set myself a timer for 10 minutes. So I can remind myself to check my potatoes afterwards. Awesome. Back to our kale. About 4 cups. Need a little bit more. So I almost broke off the right amount. But how much I have left, I could definitely make the soup again. Oh man, I have enough sausage left over. How lucky am I? I get to make 2 batches of my favorite soup. Good measure. I might just finish up what we got in here. I really love the way that kale cooks down and absorbs the flavor of the broth in this soup. One more like this one. We'll call it. So, kind of notice the last ingredient. After the potatoes are tender, you add the kale and the cream then. But you think, kale's kind of like a hearty leafy veggie, why are we adding it last? For this recipe, you want it to still have a little bit of that bite, have a little bit of that texture. We're not looking for a wilted down leafy green. We want it to have some substance. So, taking a peek, we got our 4 cups of kale plus a little extra because I love it, and that's alright. While our soup is simmering, I am going to go ahead and start cleaning up behind ourselves. That way when the soup is ready, cleanup will be a breeze. Alright guys, I see good simmering things happening. My 10-minute timer has gone off, so we're going to do a little potato check. Ooh. Whoop. Alright, it's getting pretty close, but I still feel some resistance. So we're going to go ahead and give it that 15 minutes. Give that a nice little stir. Set another timer for 5 minutes. We'll give it a check, and I guarantee it'll be ready then. Alright, coming back, we got less than a minute left. So, guys, if you have leftover kale like I did, and you want to make sure that it stores and gets its maximum shelf life, I recommend wrapping it in a damp paper towel, putting it in an airtight container in your fridge. That'll keep it from drying out. It'll retain its nice, beautiful color, and it'll last for at least 5 to 7 days in that fridge for you then. Alright, things are looking good. You know, as I'm cooking, think about ways that I could dock this up, make it my own. You know, maybe I don't want to add that sausage to it because it's vegetarian. What can we add in there? Maybe we could add some mushrooms. That would probably taste really nice in there. Find a nice meat alternative. You know, preferably one that you can brown up. You could add all sorts of spices and seasonings to it. Crushed red pepper, oregano, Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, garlic, you name it. And you're really not missing the sausage that's in there. What other things can you think of that we can add? Alright, so let's give our potato a check. It's been those 5 minutes. I can already see, oh gosh, falling apart as it comes on the spoon. That's real ready. I love it. Okay, ready? Look how nice and easy. Goes right in. No resistance at all. Slides in. Whoops. Make sure you can see it on the camera. Slides in like butter. Well, we're ready for the next step. Alright. Step number 4, we're adding in our kale that we so lovingly chopped. 4 cups in. Give it a little stir. Now, a fun fact about kale, on its own, when it's raw, it's already filled with fiber, some good vitamins and minerals. But once you add heat to it, it starts to turn this bright green color. Look, you can already see it's changing color. And it kind of transforms itself into a multivitamin. Literally, there's so many health benefits in there. Right? You still get that good fiber, but just by applying the heat, it changes the chemical makeup of the cells in there and gives you even more added benefits. Think about a recipe where you have both cooked and raw kale in it. Straight up superfood at that point. Alright, we got our 4 cups of kale. We know that we need 2 cups of heavy cream. Now I know, and we're going to teach in our further lesson about conversions, that there are 2 cups in a pint. So I just bought a pint of heavy cream because that's all that I needed. So I can take this full container and put it on in. But if you don't have a pint, make sure that you're measuring out at least 2 cups. But again, for future reference, 1 pint equals 2 cups. All right. Or 32 tablespoons. Give that a stir. Starting to resemble that soup from Olive Garden that you're probably familiar with, right? All right, now it's finally the time that we get to add our sausage back in. Look at how much grease that paper towel absorbed, right? That would have all been in our soup, and you'd probably have a nice little grease layer on the top if we didn't do it this way. So, saved ourselves a little bit of calories there too. Nice and green sausage. Right up in. Give that a stir. Now it's always important to taste as you go. Alright, we added our little 2 teaspoons of salt and our teaspoon of pepper already. Let's go ahead and give it a little taste to see if we needed to add any more seasonings. Grabbing myself a separate spoon here that hasn't been used for anything else. Give it a little taste. Okay, pretty good. But for my personal preference, I'd like a little bit more pepper. So I'm just going to pour out some pepper into the spoon I just used. Since I already cleaned up my measuring spoons. Added about 2 teaspoons more pepper there. Close to 3. And 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. Oh, yeah, that is exactly how I love my soup. Awesome. All right. Guys, that's it. That is our Zuppa Toscana soup. Feel free to add more crushed red pepper, you know, maybe more garlic if you like, whatever seasonings you want to add. If you like Italian seasonings in there, this is the point where you get to make it your own. But make sure that you taste as you go. All right, a little bit goes a long way. You can always add more, but you can't take any out. So if you're adding extra seasonings, always just add a little bit at a time. But that is Zuppa, which means soup in Italian. Toscana refers to the Tuscany region of Italy. Therefore, this soup, your Zuppa Toscana, translates literally to Tuscan soup. So I hope you try this out. I hope you enjoy your Tuscan soup, and I can't wait to hear what you think about it. Have a great day.